Hi, my name is Wayne Butler, and I'm an alcoholic. It's good to be here. Grateful to be sober. I love AA. Thank you for the invite, Leslie, and I do remember you. I actually thought you lived here. I didn't know you was in Barcelona, for crying out loud. I uh, I see many faces on here I'm familiar with. A couple sponsees, a couple ex-sponsees, and my friend Jimmy D. He paid me $5 to mention his name, so we had to get that out of the way. Several other people. I know my sponsee Kim S is here from Westchester. I love AA. I'm a name dropper, and what I mean by that is I have heroes in AA, and I like to mention them because of what they've done for me. Because a lot of my experience comes from them, and they should get credit where credit is due, rather than me take the credit seemingly by not mentioning them. And I hope you have heroes too. I ain't talking about putting them on a pedestal. These are people. There's no saying when I got sober on November 8th, 1977, that we stand on the shoulders of giants. And I'm here because of those AA giants that sacrificed a lot of their time, a lot of their energy to keep going to meetings, to keep passing on the message and not getting theirs and going away, or not getting there and being invisible in AA. I mean, no personal judgment by that. That's just a view that I've observed through the years that I've been sober one day at a time, is that a lot of people get theirs and then they drift away. And I would like to believe that most of them are sober. I don't know. I don't see them anymore. But I don't want that to. I don't want. I don't want that course because I've fallen in love with AA. And the way you know it is how I live my life in AA. I hear people say AA isn't my life, and I understand what they mean by that. AA is my life. It's my way of life. And I'm a part of the mainstream of life, but everything that's important to me is in here. And some of you that have heard my story before, you don't need to hear any more about that from me. You know why I'm grateful. And I live and breathe I mentioned the name William Barney Barnett every waking day of my life. He was my first sponsor. God knew that there was one person who could reach me because he appointed him. I would have never asked him to be my sponsor. I didn't like him when I first met him. I thought he was a total jerk. He was short. He was mean. And I didn't know you could be mean to people around here. At least that was my view of it. What he was really doing was telling me the truth. But I seen that as kind of mean. I should mention I like to drink. I like to drink a lot. I'm a Budweiser man. I drank whiskey one time. It burned my nose going down. It burned my nose coming back. I haven't had a shot of whiskey from that day to this. Budweiser and fine wine, like some of you may not recognize this. Ripple, Boone's Farm, Mad Dog, Deucey Deucey Orange, Thunderbird, Night Train, and Cisco. I was a real top shelf wine drinker, I have to tell you. And I know, and I've been to Scotland, and I smelled this bottle of wine. I swear it could have taken paint off the wall. It's a drink called Buckfast. Does anybody recognize that one? That's a definite Skid Row wine right there. That cap locks in, I have to tell you. Blah, blah, blah. And I like to say that in the 12 and 12, Bill wrote, under the lash of alcoholism, we are driven to AA. And that's my story. God didn't bring me here. And if he did you, I'm perfectly okay with that. None of my business. But God didn't bring me here. God prepared this for me. That's the thing I have to look at. Alcoholism drove me to you. But I had to do some curves before I got here. Before I took my first drink, I didn't understand alcoholism at all. I thought it all had to do with the drink, and I didn't understand. And I want to talk about that today. It's on my mind, so that's what I want to talk about. Because I had no idea what was wrong with me. I started getting psychiatrically diagnosed at the age of 9. I've got 21 psychiatric diagnoses throughout my life up to the age of 27. And I came here believing I was a psychiatric case, not an alcoholic. I believe that, and I've got the diagnosis and the paper to prove it. And my last diagnosis was a psychopath with homicidal tendencies, and I was never going to get released from the Watertown Insane Asylum. I was in the Watertown Insane Asylum 14 times. I self-signed in 4 times because that's where my girlfriend lived. Have you ever been in the psych ward? Love is thin, but it's really good at the psych ward, I have to tell you. She was a diagnosed sociopath who murdered her family, and she heard that a killer psychopath was on the ward, and so she had to meet him, and it was me. and she shared her sociopathy. I shared my psychopathy, and we fell in love. I have to tell you the truth, and it was hot. That was back in the days of One Floor of a Cuckoo's Nest, where you could literally have sex on the ward, and they were okay as long as you didn't hurt the staff. I didn't know that place could be so comforting, and she was a hot number. I have to tell you the truth. Bat, just crazy as a bed bug. But I fell in love with her on the psych ward, and I literally went back 4 times just to visit her. And she ended up dying in there, and the only in 1982. And the only reason I got out because a guy named William Barney Barnett did H&I at that very institution on the alcoholic wing. I was on the criminal side of the hospital of the psych ward. He was working on the alcohol and drug addiction side. I'm a little ahead of myself, but that's where I'm at. And I didn't understand alcoholism at all. And and I'm certain booze did for you similarly what it did to me. I was this frightened little boy in a big body, scared to death of everything. I had a lot of childhood trauma. Now, you'll hear people say that trauma did not make us alcoholic. I agree 100%. However, it triggered my relapses into drinking day after day after day. And that's what's important. How many of you identify with this? I had the isms before I ever took a drink. I was restless, irritable, discontent before I ever took a drink. I was getting diagnosed psychiatrically before I ever took a drink. I had mental, emotional disorders galore. And I like how Bill wrote it and how it works. Many of us have grave mental and emotional disorders. And so how do I possibly identify with just being alcoholic? It was really baffling to me. It was confusing to me. And the magic that was in that bottle of Budweiser, I was never, I repeat, never going to stop drinking. It was not in my playbook. I want to just tell a couple stories from my childhood. You'll get a snapshot, and then I want to get into what happened when I found AA, or when AA found me, rather. When I was 9 years old, I was in elementary school. These were the days when nobody locked doors, nobody locked cars. You had to be home by the time the street light went out, or you got a whooping. And it only took me 2 times to find out I wanted to get home by the time the light goes out. And I was on my way home from school, and what we now know the name is a pedophile. A guy took me off the street and locked me in his coal bin in the basement, and he tortured me and raped me for 3 days. That makes me a victim. I hate it when people say in AA, there's no such thing as a victim. Yes, I am. But here's the key. Victims don't get to stay sober. That was an alarming thing to find out. And if you've been victimized as a child, I want you to know something. AA can solve that for you if you're willing to go to any lengths. That's what I discovered about me. And that traumatized me. But I was sick. I was mentally and emotionally ill before that ever happened. It was like being born with a broken arm, and that compounded the fracture. And then society treats the compound fracture, but they can't treat the underlying problem. And that's only important because that's what AA, in my opinion, is designed to treat. The underlying spiritual malady. That's what AA is designed to treat. And I say that because so many of us, whoa, I almost lost my little light here. So many of us get lost in the conundrum of treatment. And I don't mean to bash treatment, but we get all caught up in professionalism and we lose the simplicity of AA. And I almost died because of that. I almost died because I could not see what was really afflicting me. And God help my family, the church, Bill said the human powers, and I just want to say this. I don't mean to be controversial at all. It's what's in our book. Bill wrote that probably no human power could relieve us of our alcoholism. Did you know what Bill was talking about was the human powers of medicine, psychiatry, psychology, sociology, theology, pharmacology, and talk therapy? Those human powers failed to relieve me of my alcoholism. From the age of 9 to the age of 27, God bless them for trying, but they failed to relieve me of my alcoholism. God could and would if he were sought. And I just want to give you a tidbit before I get lost in my story. Here's what I believe about me and you. And I'm not going to say all, but me and you. I believe that when I'm not with you and I'm not talking about God or this program or the steps, or I'm out there running on self-will, I'm a human power. But when you and I get together like we're together right now, right in the moment we're in right now, we're no longer human powers. We become spiritual powers. I absolutely believe that. And because of that, we're able to help people that all the human powers of science and medicine can't help us, can't relieve us of our alcoholism. And I need to remember that because as life has gotten good for me, it's easy for me to step back and step away and enjoy the benefits of what God and AA has brought me, and yet forget that because of AA that I'm sober. I thank God every day for AA, every day. And I thank AA for keeping me sober every day of my sobriety. And so I was raised in an alcoholic home. My father was the alcoholic by his own word in AA, had a mother that loved him and stayed with him through all his insanity. There was a lot of violence in that home. I became just like the man I hated more than anybody in the world. I became just like my dad. But I'm never going to drink, you see, because he drinks and I see what he does to the family. I see what he does in his life. He works for a trucking company out of Chicago. He was a union steward for the Teamsters. He worked for a guy named Jimmy Hoffa, and he was just like him. And he brought that work home. And I'm not blaming, I'm just reporting facts, folks. I'm just reporting facts. I'm not a victim anymore today, ladies and gentlemen. I've been fixed at that. I just want to make that clear that I'm not playing the victim card when I say anything. I will not say anything today that I have not been relieved of or overcome by way of the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. If I'm still working on it, I'm not sharing it here. I'm dealing with my sponsor. And then when I get through it, I'll bring it to you, tell you the problem and how it was solved. That's what I was taught in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I think about the trauma of that childhood, how the violence was. I was bullied. I was a frightened little kid. After what happened to me at the age of 9, I withdrew even more than what I was already. People bullied me, got beat up a lot, all through school. I was a regular target. They didn't do anything about bullying back in the 50s. And I suffered from bullying every single day at school and on the way home. This guy named Stanley Steamer, Bucktooth Stanley, he beat me up 3 times a week, whether I needed it or not. And I'd always run away. I knew I couldn't outrun him, and I knew I was going to get it beaten. So I would just all of a sudden stop and let him get it over with. And when I was 16 and he was 17, he was chasing me across the ball field. I'm running for everything I've got, and I trip over a baseball bat. That baseball bat flips up and lands right in my hand. And I stood up and swung with everything I had, and I caught him right square in the head. And I opened his head up, and he's bleeding all over me. I'll never forget how that felt. I'll never forget the feeling of his blood in my mouth and the terrible, terrible thing that felt like. And the next day he died. And I cannot tell you how grateful I was that that man was dead. And that set in motion some thinking in me and some actions in me that I didn't even know had a hold of me. And for the next 18 years, I lived on those. Nobody ever bullied me again. And I had a vendetta against bullies. And the only time I didn't act out on that is when I was drinking. And that's what I want to talk about. The unusual effect produced by alcohol. Isn't that, alcohol is only supposed to do one thing, ladies and gentlemen. It's supposed to sedate me. That's all it's supposed to do. But you know what it did for me? While it was sedating my body, it was uplifting my mind. I got excited when I drank. I got some pep in my step when I drank. I got good looking when I drank. I got pretty smart when I drank. I got diagnosed mentally retarded in 8th grade, and I went through high school, and they didn't call it special ed. They called it retarded. I was a kid that wore a helmet and did ride a bike, they said. And I stayed in that class all through high school. I didn't know how to read and write fluently when I left there, and I went right from there into war. Vietnam hadn't been on. I never could have got in the military because of my history, but because we had a little war going on, they brought me. I was going to sign up for the Marine Corps rather than go to the psych ward. The Marine Corps said, no. They sent me next door to the Navy, and the Navy took me, which is very interesting. I believe Navy is a drinking club myself. That's just the way it is. I came out of there, was married, had kids. I'm out of my mind. I don't drink all the time. I'm what you call a periodic. I can go weeks without a drink, but then this strange compulsion builds up in me, and I have to have a Budweiser. And I now know it is a phenomenon of craving, that craving for the effect produced. I didn't know that. In the big book, Dr. Silkworth says these abnormal drinkers drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. And that's my story with alcohol. I like the effect produced by alcohol. And I know my story is sometimes tough for people to hear, but I've heard worse. But I'm here to tell you the truth. I'm not here to lie to you. Please judge me if you want. I'm okay. I judge myself. But what I've done is I've overcome all of that here in Alcoholics Anonymous. I want to get that out of the way. The things that I learned as a kid have been undone by the power of 12 steps and old ideas inventory, the 4-step, 8-step, 10-step inventories, the 11-step work with the prayer of St. Francis. All those tools in the last 47 years and 9 months have cleared away 99% of that trauma I came into AA with. It took time. If there's anybody new in this room, I want you to know it takes time. And the greatest blessing I can do is give myself time to you'll hear people say time doesn't matter. I totally disagree with that. I don't mean it egotistically. I just disagree with it. Here's why. Time matters. It's taken me 47 years to get where I'm at one day at a time. Had I not stayed sober, I would not be walking the streets a free man. If I did not stay sober, I would not have learned the key elements of life that I've learned through your participation with me and with AA. Had I not stayed sober over the long term, there's so much about me that I understand and know that I would not have learned, I would not know, and I wouldn't feel valuable in God's world with God's kids. And that's so important for me today because I feel like I'm somebody in the world of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm one of God's kids to be sure. And I have this ability. I had this ability to carry a message about what my life used to be like and to demonstrate the almighty power of Alcoholics Anonymous as it's presented through God. And I think that's really important to say because you see, something has to replace the power of a drink or I'm going to drink. A lot of it's humor. Man, they made me laugh. Them old timers made me laugh. Me and Jimmy D, we get together a lot. I'll go with him when he speaks. He'll sometimes go when I speak. And we laugh the whole time, don't we, Jimmy D? It's so much fun to get around the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, to have that moral support that we get from each other and the growth that comes because of that. And I think about how I met my sponsor. Oh, my God. Barney was he was a farmer type guy. He worked for John Deere, Williams, all the manufacturing companies. He ran a machine. He was a machine operator for 40 some years. He ran those machines, and he was a giver in AA. He said he was a taker, and now I'm a giver. And he helped me and guided me so much. But he self-appointed himself. I was told to go to this address by a guy that owns a restaurant, and these people would help me. I heard money, food, shelter. And I went there because of that. And there was this blinking light in the doorway, and the blinking light made me crazy. He told me it was on, go in. He told me what to do was blinking, and I couldn't take it, so I left. I went down to Larry's Wages, mooched some Budweiser, got oiled up, and came back. Now I'm coming back. It's about 8 o'clock at night. And now I'm hungry and I want a cigarette, and they owe me. I've been thinking about it all day. So I get down there, don't care about the light now. I'll go charge through that basement doorway. I didn't notice that the basement door header was 5'10"-ish. I'm 6'3"-ish. I hit it right at the eyebrow. The impact knocked me off of my feet. I fell back, had the wind knocked out of me, and slid right into my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And inside that door was a round table with 6 or 7 old, disgusting men sitting there at it. And I slid right between 2 of them. And as I'm laying there trying to get my breath back, this old buzzard gets out of his chair and stands over me and goes like this, gives me the safe sign. Then he growls, slide right in here, you big dummy. We got a wrench to fit every nut that comes in the door. And by the looks of you, it's going to have to be an adjustable wrench. And then he says, my name's Barney. And he said, I'm an alcoholic. And I thought, you poor SOB. And I've been in enough therapy. How many of you folks been in therapy? I'm not bashing therapy, but you know as well as I do, if that man or woman on the other side of the desk self-discloses, you know what they're up to, don't you? They're trying to pitch me into giving them something back. So when he said, I'm Barney, I'm an alcoholic, I said, well, I'm Wayne and I'm ADD. He grins at me and he says, how better you are. And I said, well, you know what else I am? I'm on a roll here. And he says, what's that? I said, I'm OCD. He says, I'll bet you are. And then he says, I'm going to be your sponsor. And that's how my journey in AA began. I was not I was not an alcoholic. And for 5 years and 5 days, I went to those meetings and never once said I'm an alcoholic because I didn't believe it. That's why I've never had an official relapse in AA, because I wasn't a member of AA. I just kept going because they gave me cigarettes and bribed me with donuts and cigarettes. And I kept going there because the people treated me nice, unlike the other place. And during that 5 year period of time, I lived between Skid Row and the Watertown Insane Asylum. I spent a total of 6 years in psychiatric confinement. My last diagnosis was a psychopath with a homicidal tendency because I was acting in a certain way. I'm not going to discuss it in an open format, but you can imagine after the way my life started at 16, and I came in here with a bundle of problems. I had a lot of mental and emotional disorders, it seemed. I had a lot of psychiatric problems, medicated to the gills, and little did I know that I was inadvertently being misdiagnosed. I'm talking about Wayne Butler, nobody else. All those diagnoses based in the behavior I was doing, but no one was able to examine me spiritually. I was being examined psychiatrically. And I wouldn't have known this if I hadn't come into AA and been a part of this thing, and had not my self-appointed sponsor been doing H&I at that very institution so that he could go to the board of psychiatry and say to them, I think he might be spiritually sick rather than psychiatrically. Now, how arrogant is that for a layman to say that to a psychiatrist? And yet the psychiatrist listened to him. They had a hearing on me. I went in there on February 14th, 1977. I got committed again. And I got released on October 30th, 1977, because of my sponsor going to the board of psychiatry and saying, why don't you let him have me one more chance to see if AA can help him. And you know what? They let me out with him. I drank the night I left. I drank for 6 more days, and I was struck sober on November 8, 1977, because of the first time I raised my hand and said, my name's Wayne, I'm an alcoholic. From that day to this day, I've not had anything that affects me from the neck up, mentally, emotionally. I'm not recommending this for nobody else. I stopped taking all them meds because somehow I believed that my problem's spiritual. And I'm so glad that happened to me, folks, because I was a mess, just like many of us are. I was a mess in my head. I had all kinds of people playing doctor in AA, telling me I should go back on medication, that I was bipolar. A lot of innocent, well-meaning people. But the truth of the matter is, let me tell you what I've got. I've got alcoholism, and I didn't know the difference. Now, this is for me. Remember that. This is me. I didn't understand something about this alcoholism thing. That ism that came first. Internal spiritual maladjustment. I began to believe that it was possible because I had a broken spirit and I was separated from God, that all my behavior is directly related to the inability to live a spiritual life. I dared believe that. And then I found in Bill's history where he had the same experience with depression that I had, that he had that same experience, that after he had that electric white light experience, his depression came back. Within a month of that white light experience, Bill Wilson's depression came back. And I found the work that he did with Father Ed Dowling to overcome that depression. Father Dowling, out of priest, I can't think of the priest. No, can't think of it right now. I lost my thought. He believed that Bill's depression might be spiritual in nature. So he pulled Bill aside in 1946. Bill's sponsor was drunk. Bill's sponsor was drunk. As a matter of fact, half of the authors in the first edition were drunk. And so Bill didn't have a sponsor. He was sponsoring himself. And I found this history where Father Dowling, Jesuit priest, Father Dowling was a Jesuit, and he believed he knew what was wrong with Bill. And he sat Bill down one day when Bill was asking for help in his own way. And Father Dowling says to Bill, Bill, I think I know what's wrong with you. He says, I don't believe it's clinical depression. I think you're suffering from something even more dangerous, and that's spiritual depression. I think you have a depressed spirit, and I think it's because you're taking a beating emotionally and mentally, and it's that spiritual separation that you have. And he took Bill back through the 12 steps from 1947 to 1949, treating him specifically for spiritual depression. And you know what? Bill's depression lifted, said he, in 1955 and never returned to the day he died. Folks, I found that history. I applied that step work to my life that he did with Father Dowling. and I never believed it could possibly happen. But by the time I was 10 years sober, my depression lifted completely and has not returned to this very day. And I got to tell you, that's the power of Alcoholics Anonymous. And as I think about the effect produced by alcohol, is so profound and so powerful. I had no idea that that's what makes me alcoholic is, and I want to read that real quick. What makes me alcoholic is very simple. If when I honestly want to, do I find I can't quit drinking entirely? Yes. Or if when you're drinking, do I have little control of the amount I take? Yes. He says, you are probably alcoholic. I went like this. That was close. Probably. And somewhere in Alcoholics Anonymous, I got pulled from probably to definitely. That's what makes me alcoholic. But what makes it alcoholism is when I have that internal spiritual maladjustment, I experience those symptoms. That's what is alcoholism. And if alcohol seems to solve that dilemma, I have alcoholism. And because I believe that, AA is the only thing that can treat that. Because, so for some reason, this is controversial, but I know the science of ethanol alcohol. I know just enough science to get myself in trouble. But ethanol alcohol, what constitutes disease is my inability to metabolize it properly and the obsession I get from its effect produced. So when I stop drinking, the disease is fully arrested. I didn't know that, did you? But scientifically, when I stopped drinking and the obsession was lifted, the disease is fully arrested 100%. And then AA is in the picture because AA is designed to do one thing and one thing only, treat a spiritual malady. And that made sense to me. I thought, oh, because we'd be full of diseased people if AA could treat disease. But AA is designed to treat a spiritual maladjustment, the symptoms of a spiritual malady. And I found those symptoms in chapter 4, We Agnostics. A chapter I wasn't going to read, folks, because I was taught in school, Sunday school, all about Jesus and everything. And when my sponsor asked me to read chapter 4, I said, I can't. He said, why? I said, well, the title. He said, what's wrong with the title? I said, it's We Agnostics. And he says, so what? I said, well, if I read a book that says We Agnostics, Jesus is going to think I'm not sincerely believing in him. And that sponsor looked at me and he says, you're a special kind of stupid, ain't you? And it's like, that kind of struck me. And he said, just read it. And I read it. And that's when I found that sentence. It's the third sentence on page 44. What makes me alcoholic? But that alcoholism is a whole different thing. I didn't know that. But I found the evidence of it in the big book in the 12 and 12 and that history with Father Ed Dowling and Dr. Tebow and how they ministered to Bill Wilson in 1947 and how his depression lifted in 1955 and never came back. When I found that work and did it myself, the unbelievable happened. I got free of from the psychodynamics of psychopathy. All those symptoms of being a psychopath have gone away, but I should say they've been removed, which means they're still there. All I got to do is quit doing this work and they'll come roaring back. But they've been removed, not expelled, but removed. Then they knock on my door every now and then. Just like the thought about a drink can knock on my door every now and then. But I know if I take a drink, what happens to me, so I don't want to drink. But I have to have constant relief for anxiety, for self-doubt, chronic self-centered fear, that the extreme self-will run riot. It's like when the disease verbiage got popular in AA, I began to say things like, my disease wants me dead, my disease is doing push-ups. And my sponsor says, do you know how foolish you sound? I said, what? He says, you're given an artificial intelligence. Maybe he was the first one to coin that. I'm not sure. You're giving an artificial intelligence to something that's not live. And it's like, oh, I was doing that, wasn't I? Because that way I'm not taking responsibility for nothing. And then he says, when you say you woke up in your disease, he says, what you really woke up with was self-will run riot. That's what you woke up with. He says, you need to understand that if you expect to find a good life in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I hope, no, I'm not scattered. I'm all over the place. But you know what? Here I am living a good life inside. I don't have all those cash and prizes people have. I was institutionalized. I came into AA institutionalized. That didn't go away just because I got sober, and so I lived a life that's difficult for some, but it was how I lived. Uh, I got along really well. I started sponsoring people. Sponsoring people saved my life. I became an activist in AA. I don't mean a protagonist. I got active in AA, and I believe that that has to continue if I want to not only stay sober but stay sane and enjoy life one day at a time. I mean, I like I said, I graduated high school with a retarded high school diploma. Went to war, came back, and I have gotten my formal education in AA. My sponsor told me to go to meetings where people are more better off than you. Go to meetings where people are smarter than you. In your case, that shouldn't be hard to find. Go to meetings where people are doing better than you. How else are you going to improve if you don't do that? Go where you don't feel like you fit in and get a commitment. Become a part of. And folks, that's just exactly what I did. I went to uh, three of my meetings are in the Pacific Palisades of California, what burned up in January. We're just moving back all three of those meetings in the next 2 weeks. It's incredible. But I've got 5 speaker meetings I go to. Every one of those meetings are people that are highly accomplished in different worlds of AA. What are you screen sharing for? Oh, okay, thank you. And what I learned from doing that is that they're better off than me, they're better financed than me, but they're not better than me. That was the secret sauce Barney wanted me to find. That no matter how better off they might be, they're not better than me. And so I'm able to mix with any type of personality, any type of crowd in this world. And I've got 5 minutes left, and I want to share the power of sponsorship, if I may. When I was 10 years old, my dad, trying to protect me from what was happening to me as a kid, took me on runs with him down to the deep south. I knew my dad was racist. I didn't have that word at the age of 10, but I figured it out. My dad was racist and bigoted, and he belonged to his hate organization in the deep south. And he took me on a run with him, and they were having bonfires, burning crosses. I had no idea what it was, but they had a uniform for me. They gave it to me. And I have to tell you the truth, I thought the uniform was cool. The hat was kind of funky. And I asked my dad if I could wear it to school. And he had a strange reaction to that. Don't judge me yet, I'm not done. And I'd like to tell you they didn't get me, but they did. That's what I brought into AA, this systemic hatred for everybody. And there was no way out. And I did my fifth step with my sponsor in my first month of sobriety. So he knew everything about me. I didn't keep a secret. He knew about the ugliness of my life and the hatred that I live in. When I was a month sober, a black guy named Charles came and asked me to sponsor him. And I told him to get away from me. I put a gun in his face and told him I'd put him in the ground if he talked to me again. I went home that night and my sponsor called me up. He said, I heard you told Charles you wouldn't sponsor him. And I said, of course I can't sponsor him. You know my story. How can I sponsor him? He said, listen here, dummy. Are you aware that nobody, not one person in Alcoholics Anonymous likes you? Are you aware of that? And I said, quite. He says, are you aware that if you don't have a sponsor, you won't be able to stay sober? And I said, so you say. He says, you're going to call Charles up. You're going to apologize to him. You're going to tell him you were wrong for calling him that name. You're going to tell him you'll never use that word again as long as you live. You're going to ask him to forgive you. And if he will, you'd be happy to sponsor him. And he says, if you won't do that, I'll have nothing more to do with you as long as you live. And he hung up on me. That scared me. He was my lifeline. I called Charles up. Charles heard my voice and he kind of got quiet. And he says, what? I said, well, my sponsor told me I had to call you. I was hedging my bet. He said, told me I got to call you and apologize to you. So I was wrong to tell you what I said. I was wrong to call you that name. I'll never use that name again. And if you'll forgive me, I'll be happy to be your sponsor. He starts crying and he says, I can't believe you called me. He says, I do forgive you, and I still want you to be my sponsor. And I thought, well, that didn't work. And then 2 months later, this 6-foot lesbian comes up to me, pokes me in the chest, and says, you're going to sponsor me. And I said, the hell I am. Jump on that kickstand of yours and ride your ass out of here. Got a call that night from my sponsor. Heard you told Joyce you wouldn't sponsor her. Same thing, same thing. We got done talking, and Joyce goes like this: "I told you were going to sponsor me. Ha ha ha! I thought you so and so." Month later, Adam the Jew asked me to sponsor him. Same thing. That happened 6 more times in my first 2 years of sobriety, and I found out my sponsor was sending them to me. Because you see, he knew what all the experts in the world didn't know. He knew I had a broken spirit. And he knew the only thing that was going to fix that was sponsoring them. The very thing my dad taught me to hate. And I want to tell you something. My father found his way to AA before I did. My father could not stay sober because he could not get away. He could not escape that history of his. He could not make peace with it. He didn't sponsor nobody. He didn't have the same opportunity that I had because of his defiance. And you know what? My dad died a year and a half after I got sober, and he died drunk, and he died alone, and he died miserable. And I think about that because had my sponsor not been humble like he is, had he not known how to deal with an alcoholic mind, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you on Zoom. I'd be locked up. If I was alive, I'd be locked up in one of those institutions for life because that was my next venture. I say that not as a drama, not as anything poignant. That's just the power of Alcoholics Anonymous, the power of sponsorship. I sponsor several alcoholics now, and they're of the type that I am. I like to call it Bill W. type, intensely emotional, neurotic. I'm still neurotic at times. That hasn't gone away. It's only been removed. It peeks its head every now and then. And what's happened is I found a way to live within the framework of Alcoholics Anonymous and not hurt any living soul. And I want to tell you something. If your success is college, if your success is like my friend Jimmy, who got these businesses going and made a lot of money, and he's really well off. I respect him for that. That's not my story. You know what my successes are? I haven't killed anybody in 47 years. That's what I haven't done. I haven't abused any women in 47 years. I haven't beaten a kid or did anything appropriate in 47 years. I haven't taken any animals on one-way walks in 47 years. And that may not sound like a big deal to you, but it's everything to me. I'm safe around people. People are safe around me. I still don't like bullies. I just don't stalk them anymore. I let God handle it. God is in my life, alive and well. I haven't had a drink for 47 years and 9 months and some days, one day at a time. And it is one day at a time. Because if I let up on the gas, this thing that's been removed is back here. And it'll be there until the day I die. I'm convinced of that. There's no cure for what I got. There's no cure for the ism. If you're asthmatic, I love the word asthmatic. That's a word I made up. Don't you love it? I think it sings. It's like an asthma sufferer who has an asthma attack. They say they're asthmatic. Well, when I have an attack of self-will, I'm asthmatic. I just love that. And AA has given me a way to live this life where the ism doesn't control me anymore, where I can live at peace with you, with other people, and work, be self-supporting, pay my bills, for God's sake, make all my amends. It's been a lifetime for me to make amends for some things. I have to make a living amends in some situations, but I had that opportunity. I hope that I've inspired somebody. I hope someone's got uplifted so that you don't need the uplift of a drink. Thanks for letting me share, Leslie.